Hi there, my name's Mark Bachmann. I'm the Managing Director and founder of Glenelg Trust. We're a not-for-profit organisation that works across southeastern Australia. And something I was keen to just talk about really briefly is my personal interest and also our organisation's interest in ecological restoration, but particularly with a focus on thinking about the importance of working with nature and ecological processes. When I think of ecological processes, I think of those abiotic ingredients like water and fire, but also some of the drivers in an ecosystem like keystone species that influence the other levels or of creatures in the food web and the ecosystem around them. So a couple of examples I thought I'd mention briefly that are a focus for our organisation at the moment. Wetland restoration is a really key theme for us, particularly given the part of Australia that we work in, which has lost the majority of its wetlands to various forms of development. And one of those major impacts has been the artificial drainage of wetlands, which is removing the water from areas that previously used to inundate. Now, talking about the water as a key ingredient, as an ecological process, when we return the water to a artificially dehydrated landscape or wetland feature, it's amazing to watch the spontaneous process of ecological recovery that will unfold, and particularly in a wetland that holds water for any period of time, more than a few weeks really, below the high water mark, you'll get this transformation as the water does a huge amount of natural weed control for us and then paves the way for the germination of a whole lot of whether it's seeds or roots and rhizomes in the soil that can then trigger a plant response. And depending on where you are in the landscape, there's also usually the ability for a whole host of other species, particularly animal species, and especially species that are mobile like birds, to come back and find these areas a short time after the restoration work begins. So we've got fantastic results in seeing a wide range of species, and including some of our most threatened species returning to these ecosystems in relatively quick time. That's just a taste of our wetland restoration work. If you'd like to learn more, then please feel free to look up Glenelg Trust and wetland restoration on the web. The other topic I thought I'd mention very briefly that's a new and emerging area that we're very interested in, that also is a key ecological process, is to better understand the interaction between trying to recover ecological communities and thinking particularly of vegetation community and the what we call the ecosystem engineers, or the soil fossicking mammals that occur in these habitats. So our organisation has, in the last couple of years, has secured a property called Mount Van Dyke, which is an inlying parcel of land in the Bachmann National Park, which is in far southwest Victoria. It's one of our restoration reserves, and it's going to be one of the largest grassland restoration sites in Western Victoria, remembering that grassland restoration is very difficult and even small areas are large projects for grassland restoration. But the really fascinating and unique thing about this site is that not only are we looking to gradually restore the missing grasslands to this previously farmed site, which is embedded in the middle of a national park, but we're going to be using it after having received a grant in the last couple of years and some wonderful government and philanthropic support to build a predator-proof fence around this area. We're going to be reinserting the missing digging marsupials into this environment at the same time, which means that we're going to have a really interesting opportunity to see what interactions, symbiotic relationships we see that interplay between us putting the missing ingredients back into this ecosystem from a grassland flora point of view, and how that recovering ecosystem is benefited by the reintroduction of the missing digging marsupials into that ecosystem, which is something that most grassland restoration projects don't have the ability to do. So very early days, and we've just got a grassland restoration specialist, John Bradford, who started work with us in the last 6 months, who's helping us with this part of the journey. But yes, watch this space, because we're hoping that it will provide some really interesting insights into those of you out there who might be interested in grassland restoration and ecosystem function in general, which, to go back to where we began this this short topic of conversation is really thinking about how we can use nature and natural processes, ecological drivers to deliver a positive trajectory of change in our otherwise degraded ecosystems, to try and bring them back to something closer to their original reference state. At this particular site, we're looking at the initial species that we would utilise being the southern brown bandicoot and long-nosed potoroo. Interestingly, these are two species that are currently still occur in the surrounding national park, but have been in decline, and as well as having a potential role in the restoration of the grassland ecosystem, we're also going to be using the Mount Van Dyke Restoration Reserve as a staging point for releases into or supplementing the populations in the wider forest around the site, which gives us the opportunity to bolster the genetics of those populations, and we will be working with the Victorian State Government on that component of the project. We're also assessing the potential to utilise this site as a staging point for a experimental trial that would involve returning the eastern quoll to this environment, given that the surrounding national park, both the Kabobani National Park and Lower Glenelg National Park, have been subject to some of Victoria's longest running state-funded predator control programs and this is baiting for introduced foxes. And we're really interested to see if using a safe haven like this as a staging point for the eastern quoll, when we get to the point of actually using this site as a staging point for that species, that we can then transition them to the wild outside the fence and see if we can get them to stick back in that landscape, now that it's an area that has had continuous control of what is almost universally agreed to be probably one of the key drivers of their demise on the mainland from the arrival of the fox in the late 1800s. In brief, what really motivates me to work in the environmental sector is seeing the opportunity to see nature recover when we give it a chance. And something that has really dawned on me is when we see that environmental recovery, seeing how much that means to people, the wider community, but particularly our First Nations, traditional owners. To me, ecological restoration is also a key ingredient in reconciliation in this country.